In this episode, we continue with Ginny Gilmore, part 2, and we pick up on the heartfelt conversations and exploration, really diving into aging, intimacy, connecting to truth.
Being present in the aging and even the dying process.
Sink in with us. You're listening to the Red Couch Rebels, a safe, comfy space for vulnerability and self-growth. I'm Jenny.
And I'm Erin.
We are seekers and self-advocates.
Yeah, we're not your doctors.
Or your therapists.
No, we're just fellow seekers on our own journeys of self-discovery.
Explore your inner rebel with us.
Let's sink in.
Well, we're going to kick it off again.
Okay, we'll kick off again.
All right, we are back for part 2. So if you have not listened to part 1, you need to. You don't need to for this conversation, but I'm saying there was so much beautiful exploration and sharing that you just need to.
Yeah.
But what do we want to go? Where do we want to go this time?
Okay. Well, before that conversation, the three of us have had other conversations, and I would really love an update on part of your current exploration right now, Ginny, is around intimacy in aging and dying. Has anything more unfolded for you as you've been exploring these topics for yourself? I would love to hear more about that.
I'm 77. So clearly, my perspective on the life ahead of me is different than it's ever been when I was younger. It's just unique, and I'm glad that I didn't understand it sooner. And I wouldn't want you to be here because it's not time yet. But when you get here, if you're lucky enough, and I am, it's challenging for many reasons. Through a synchronistic relationship, some years back, maybe 5, it's a funny story about how I got connected to this man who wanted to retire from a restaurant in Dallas that he started. He just wasn't necessarily interested in what I had to say to him. And normally I wouldn't. But I really needed to connect with him. There was a really deep part of me. So eventually we did. And I shared a book that I had read that I thought would help him. And he read it and he just went in full force to what that book asked him to do and found a friend in the author who became a coach to him, who recommended a book to him after that he read. And then he recommended, my friend, the book to another friend of mine that I connected with each other. And he told me about it. So I ordered it, put it next to me. I was in Florida in my reflection space. And maybe a week later, I got a message saying that he was doing what he loved to do. He was canoeing with a group of people, and they went to this beautiful park that they always went to, and he was preparing the park space for them to be and stay overnight, I guess. And I don't know how it happened, but he fell off the cliff and died unexpectedly. Like, really. And wow. I said, wow, this man who I met the first time in the restaurant, maybe a year before, something like that. Wow, look at everything he did and learned. He wrote his kids letters. He apologized to people that he felt that he harmed back in his life, and he wanted to forgiveness to flow. He just did so many things, not knowing what was going to happen to him. And I felt like really grateful that whatever it was, we could call it that rebel, energy, wouldn't let me not talk to him. Krista, who is the leader of Sophia today, was with me, and he said to her when he was in the lunch line that day, "What does she want to talk to me about anyway?" And she said, "You need to talk to her." And I think that made a difference. I mean, all these things happened. So we did. And then the rest happened. Well, the book next to me was called The Five Invitations. And it was about learning to live fully from what this author had learned over working with 1,000 patients in hospice, an organization that he and others created. It was a safe space for people to die consciously, intentionally, and loved. And I read that book because I felt like I was supposed to. And it was next to me, and he died, and I read it. And it was so compelling to me that I felt like I needed to share it with other people. And it took 5 years maybe for the right situation. COVID happened, and that delayed the whole process. And I had to find the right place. I had to have a, you might say, container in which people would come to this book study. And it was our church in North Naples that really loves these kind of learning opportunities. And we're mostly my age in that church. So it's very relevant. And we just did that last winter. And I have this good friend. She's a retired minister, and she did it with me. She was going through the grief of her mom, who had died like during the 9 months or so that we were involved in preparing. She had some limits during that time because of grief, and we learned how to support each other. And that in itself was a part of my journey. It's like, okay, when this grief process hits someone, it's now part of my cousin's journey, who just recently lost her husband. Then there's a time a person needs certain kinds of support. And there are various ways that we can learn how to be that kind of support. And I know in my heart that when I experience this kind of loss, and at my age, people die, and some of us die, we all die at different times. So we go through this kind of loss. I think it's really important to know where that kind of support is in our lives, my life. And for me personally, I feel called to be that kind of person. So, out of this experience of this book that's been such a part of my heart for quite a while, I knew it was time, and I signed up to be in the training program, which is 50 hours, to become a Stephen minister. And that's in our church in North Naples. And I live in the Chicago area now in the summer and into the fall. And there are many opportunities for me to be able to serve that way here as well. I just need to find the right containers, and I'm making progress with that. It's part of my intention, part of my, I use that inner rebel energy to go out and try new things and see how it fits. And I know I'm preparing to be that kind of presence for others. And I also know that in finding the right places to be able to be that I will know how to reach out for those who will help me too. As one of my really good friends in Florida shared with our church community, when she found out that her husband was diagnosed with a very serious illness and she was going to be walking that journey with him, she needed support. And one of the Stephen ministers was there for her. And she will never, ever forget how that really helped her stay grounded and stay attuned and attentive in the ways that mattered, including the encouragement to have the conversations. I have one friend who lost a husband, and she said, we never talked about it. And that breaks my heart. And I understand because our culture doesn't necessarily believe in death and doesn't believe in endings and doesn't think it's a good, cool thing. All we see on TV is how we're going to be young again, how we're going to fix our skin, how we're going to fix our body, how we're going to do all this and take a pill for something. And as I said before, the natural growth of the body is going to be like a plant, like a flower, and it eventually goes down. So I think my calling is to learn, live into the way of being that kind of presence I've trained for. One person said to me, you're going to take 50 hours of training. How can you keep taking all this training? And I do. I keep taking training because when I was going to have a baby, I had to learn about it. I had to learn how to birth a baby, and I had to get somehow prepared. Now I have to learn about how I'm going to transition into my next life. And, I have a choice. I can think about it as the most dismal thing in the whole wide world, or I can look at it as a sort of adventure. Because guess what? I have to do it. So we all do. As my friend would always say, well, I'll make it to the end. And we used to laugh. Well, I don't laugh anymore so much about that. But anyway, I want to have the conversations. And my closest friends who are my age, we have the conversations about this. And we're having them with our kids and with our spouses. My mother died when I was turning 26. When I was 10, she had her first of 3 cancers. And although no one told me at the time, I could feel it. The family thought she wasn't going to make it through her surgery that she went to. Well, she made it, but she was changed forever. I mean, she had to eat differently. She had 3/4 of her stomach removed. It changed her. It changed her physically. It changed her spirit. I mean, she had the strongest spirit, but it changed her. And I was only 10. So these endings, they're not so cool. I don't like them. And part of my capacity to be intimate, well, we weren't. We never even talked to my mother about what she was going through, really. We just said she's going to be fine. We told her she's going to be fine, but she wasn't going to be fine. So that closed me off to the intimacy of the truth in hard situations, especially like vulnerable situations. I really wasn't comfortable being vulnerable for a long, long time. In fact, I really didn't learn how to be vulnerable until I met Meredith, my therapist, when I was 50 years old and sat in the sacred space with her. And I could be totally myself. And it was 15 years of my conversations with her that really helped me, as well as the time in the woods, to find my own intimacy with my own self, my own soul, my own heart, my own feelings. I had to learn to feel it all, not be so afraid to run away from something that was going to hurt. And that's what I did for a long time. When something was going to hurt, I ran. Well, I had to learn to stay. This is all very relevant to, I mean, like, if I don't do it now, I better do it now.
There's a line that you said that's really standing out to me, and it was intimacy of the truth.
Yeah.
That's really like, I don't know, it's just lingering in me, and being present for that intimacy of the truth. that really is like the core of what you were describing last time we spoke about this, and this time as well, is the fear and discomfort of that, right? And
Yes.
not having practice of that. Have
Yes.
your the other people that are going through this training, or the book that have read the book and are doing this work in their lives, what have you heard back about their experiences of looking for that intimacy within their own families or their own circles?
The man that wrote the 5 invitations tells the story of having a heart attack and how suddenly everything he was doing for others was, he was the one whose life was challenged. He didn't know if he was going to live. So he shares his journey in the book about that, and about how it opened him to have different kinds of conversations with his children than he had had before. One of the things about that book that stuns me is that people came into that hospice. One guy had been in prison most of his life. Oh gosh, there were people that came in that were kind of had messed up lives. They didn't have a lot of support. And what he writes about is that in this place where they came to die, something happens when you know you're going to die, I guess, because that's what I saw over and over again. These people felt the freedom and the love to be just who they were. There was nothing else that was needed from them, no matter who they were. That was it. Whatever they wanted, that was it. And for the first time, for some of them, they felt loved and they felt safe. And
Mm.
they flourished, even though they were dying. They became their story. And that touched him deeply enough to write the book, to share the kinds of things that they taught him. Um, he he had to become the presence that wasn't afraid of death himself. And he had to provide that kind of, he had to be comfortable enough with the truth of what he saw in front of him, and that these people were going to die. And at the same time, he had to be attentive and present to how these people would become more themselves and what was important to them. So I kind of lived in the space of the author as I read that book, trying to ask myself, how would I be that? And I have a long way to go to be as calm and as grounded and as peaceful and as unafraid of that journey as he seemed to be for me. I think most of all, what impressed me was, well, there were all kinds of things about, see things as whole, um, be willing to sit in whatever is, no matter what. It's neither this or that, uncertainty, wholeness, but also be attentive to what you don't want to regret. Be attentive to those you love. I sat down and wrote my daughter and her husband a letter after Christmas because I knew they didn't really know all the things I noticed about how good they were to us during Christmas. I mean, there were so many little things they did and so many things that happened. But one of the things that happened at Christmas that never happened before, in which I became very vulnerable, is that Alex, my son-in-law's brother, and his wife came from New York with their family of 4 kids. And my daughter and her husband have 4 kids. And they wanted to do these talking cards at the table after Thanksgiving meal. And the kids, there were so many of them, they were at a different table. They had their own space and they were old enough, to do their own thing. And so we had our own space. And after we ate, we started to pick a talking card, and these subjects were serious. Mine, I think I was near to last, was about what is spirituality in your life? Well, we had a group of people that were extremely diverse, and it was a hot topic in the family because of the choice that some people make isn't always the choice that all family members agree with. Um, and I knew that it was sensitive. And so I said, well, I'll draw another card. So I drew another card and I said, no, I'll draw another card. Well, by the time I drew 2 more, I realized, no, it's this one.
Mm-hmm.
And so I opened it up. Well, there was a point at which all I could do was tell the truth. And I said, well, and my kids were both there and their spouses. And I said, I made some mistakes in my life and I'm sad about those. And I always wanted to have a successful marriage. And I watched the 2 of you. I get tears telling you, just like I did with them. And I said, I watched the 2 of you and I watched your marriages and I learned so much from you. And I'm so grateful that Jim and I have each other and that I actually got and have a very, very beautiful marriage. And they both said, oh, Mom, you do. Of course you do. And they jumped in. And I was so vulnerable to say that, but it came from the bottom of my heart. So I wanted my kids to know that that conversation meant so much to me. And I was so grateful. So, like that, I'm very, very aware of um, what I hope to pass on to the grandchildren one way or the other, and how to do that. I keep sort of waiting because those times, if you have the intention in your hearts, they're going to show themselves. It's just up to me to show up when they do and do what I did that day. Really let it rip, if you will. Um, you really have to, I really had to push through any resistance and just tell the story. Just be there. In my truth, I'd held that truth in my heart for a long time about my kids. And then just trust that it'll come out right. And it does because they hear it. Their hearts hear it. And I don't want to miss that. I mean, those are crystal moments in my life. So you might say that that particular story of what happened that day is one of the things that was nurtured as I picked up that book next to me in my reflection space in Florida and began to read. So a lot of things are happening from that, which God knows I would never have known that that book was going to be sitting there because of the story that got it there. That's what makes life so rich, is if we can really, really begin to see how these synchronicities are happening and why they're happening and learn to never, never look away from those kinds of flow connections, if you will, because there's something trying to show us something. It's meant for us. And that's happening every day if we're willing to look. I bet
Yeah.
you two believe that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. While you've been sharing, which is so beautiful, thank you for sharing your story and what you're exploring and what you're feeling. But as you've been talking, the question that's been coming up for me is, but how? Like, how do you go there? For me, when I look at my grandparents or other individuals in my life where I want to have those conversations, and we've talked about this. You've encouraged in conversations, you've encouraged us to lean into that intimacy, even in death, and not knowing, and so anyways, the question of, well, I wonder what Ginny would say, is like, what's the first question, right? But then you're starting to talk about following the nudges, and
Mhm.
that's something that I have learned in, and it's been nourished in our conversations since 2020 when we really started working together again with the book. But I think that's a piece of it. The how is just slowing down enough to notice what your heart is saying and trusting that, I mean, they might not get it exactly how you intend, but it's the starting point.
What do you really yearn for?
Yeah.
Um, if you can get in touch with that place inside your heart, um, sometimes a way to say that is, what do I really hope happens, or
Yeah.
what do I yearn for? If you can really get in touch with that, you begin to build the field.
Yeah.
I think there's something about that. When you get in touch with that, then be very keen to notice anything that happens. I wonder, in the case of your grandparents, what it is that they wish they could tell you,
Yeah.
want
Well, and
you to
that's
know.
that's part of my yearning too, of just wanting to have the conversation. And we've had some, but I know there's more depth. So I
Yeah,
think my question for them, and even my question for you is, you know, what what do you want to share? What do you want your loved ones to know?
it's the right question that I live in every day. Um, my grandson is going to graduate from high school. Um, so I think about, what would I give him? I want to give every one of my grandchildren this book, but um, I don't want them to lose it. So I'm going to keep their copies here until it's time. And it's not quite time to give that to Max. There's a book called My Grandfather's Blessings by Rachel Naomi Raymond, a doctor that was part of my life 25 years ago or so. Her writing is beautiful. And sometimes I read, she has a book called Kitchen Table Wisdom also. And they're these small stories. And I sometimes read them before I go to bed. And they have all of the qualities of life that I care about in them, that are about that kind of connection we have with each other, that's intimate, that's caring, that's kind, that listens to. One of the things that Frank, the author of The Five Invitations, was really good at was he was in touch with his intuition, or you might say the wisdom in his heart. He could hear it. He could hear it when he was in that kind of presence with people he was supporting, and it would tell him what to do.
Hmm.
It really did tell him what to do. I've had that experience in my life where I didn't know what to do, and suddenly something would drop in or come up or show itself to me if I was in a space to hear. And I would find my way. So, more than anything, I would like um, to leave the message of listen to your heart, learn to listen to and hear the wisdom in your heart, because it will take you where you need to go. And I just think that this belief, let's say the graduates of high school, I'm going to go and do all this stuff and I'm going to learn all this stuff. And I wish that my grandson would know this, and maybe he does. But I wish that he would know that more than anything, because things get hard. And we, as human beings, have tough times. And we have this huge potential. And I just believe more than anything else that there's this deep place inside of us in which, if we can get deep enough, and this is what I think I'm hoping for, if we can get deep enough into that place, it's a place where there are no wars. We don't have our judgments. It's free of all that. It's this deepest place of love. And in that place, I think where I saw the author Frank with these people, oh my gosh, everything's clear. It's a different place to be, and it's kind of what I really want to spend more time in as I get older, and to go deeper into that place where there is no, there's not this or that. There's no duality. It's no war, no fight, really. I mean, it doesn't mean you don't have this energy of the possible, but it's deep, and it's called love. And I think the word love is real. I don't think it's fluffy. I don't think it's soft. And I think it's not easy. And to practice going deeper, deeper into that vulnerability, that sensitivity, that place that you're talking about, Jenny, is the gift of being human. I really do. I think it's being fully alive, as Frank said. Um, so I wish that in some ways, and somehow, and I know this is one way, that that learning more than anything, that life is about loving and being loved. It's a lifetime journey, and it includes yourself. Starts with yourself, always starts with you. Is really the most important thing about being human. And it's hard. And it requires connection with others like you two are showing us, like the three of us, I think, are in. It requires connection and relationship with others. You said that as you opened up. You talked about relationship. It flows between us. I can't be my best potential without you. You can't be it without me. We're trying to demonstrate that here because we really don't know the potential that's coming up in the middle of us, but we're giving it our best self, trying to provide, our best self to that potential. And we couldn't do it without each other.
I think it's the practice of intimacy, that conversation you're talking about and sharing that from the talking points cards, right? taking those opportunities to be in the discomfort together of the vulnerability of both saying and hearing, receiving the information coming out. I think that practice is ultimately like what is necessary for what you had said, you desire for your own passing, because you had shared that you want that intimate, fully present experience in the passing, unlike what you experienced with your own mother, right? You want them to
Oh,
be in
yes.
honesty. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that practice is so important. And I think the practice itself is rewarding before you even get to that moment or those days or weeks, whatever it is that your passing is going to look like, right? But what a
Oh, yeah.
gift that book was to you to start moving into the discomfort so you can really, truly connect.
I think so too. I think what a gift. I mean, who would have ever thought that's how I'd get there? I mean, that story, but I love the story. Um, those prompts in our hearts, and we talk about the rebel spirit, we talk about even the wild, and then we talk about the wise, but learning to really, really notice those prompts in our heart. Um, wow. I mean, and then to know that even though sometimes it looks ridiculous, what it's kind of asking me to do, oh gosh. I mean, if I look at that whole situation and then not give up if the prompt won't go away, you know, say, okay, I think that requires some of that rebel spirit, um, to trust. Um, I pull angel cards in the morning, and I pulled trust today, and it was holding the space
Oh.
in my book. Um, trust that that prompt is real. I
Hmm.
mean, that's the thing. People will tell you, ah, what intuition, yeah, it's real. It's real.
It's so real.
Yeah. I
It's so
love how you say the
real.
ones that won't go away.
The ones
There
that
are
won't
some
go away, right?
the ones that won't go away. Or the one I heard recently was it's time, and then it was you can fight this if you want, but it's not going away, right? Like it's
Right.
that's the intuitive nudge I got of it's time. And I my ego and my fear, what didn't want to accept the nudge.
I
But
do.
yeah, it's time. A gentle mother nudging of come on, let's go.
Oh,
Even
down
when
yeah.
down the slide you go.
yeah, even when you're not ready.
Yep, yep, you're gonna
And
make
even when
it.
Especially,
you're
yeah.
not ready, I mean, you
Yeah.
can't be more ready. That's the
Mm,
thing. You're as
yeah.
ready as you can be until you jump. I mean, we always want to, like, well, let's just say preparing, like learning about having a baby. Well, you can't until you're there. And
Right.
then once it begins to happen, well, everything you've learned, you integrate however you're going to integrate it. But I mean, you just can't learn anymore till you jump, till you take the leap. And and you're never really ready. I mean, really, when you think about it, this whole thing of, well, I'm not ready is sort of a scapegoat of not,
Mm,
being ready to take the risk. Um, I do think to develop a good sense of knowing when to take a risk, that comes with failure, comes with, you know, experiences that don't always work. The goodness about an experience that doesn't work is to truly believe, which I do, but it took time to learn this. What can I learn from that? What just happened? What can I learn? Sometimes I read a story last night. This is really cool. It was a story by Mark Nepo, and I read it before I went to bed. It was really cool about this. There was this young man that trained and trained and trained and trained to be a runner, and finally was ready to run this big race. Really had trained for years. It was what his whole life was about. And he started to run and he got way ahead of everybody, like way ahead. And he was all by himself. And suddenly, in front of him, a heron, a big heron, flew down and went on the road. And it so touched him for whatever reason. He wasn't, I'm sure he didn't, wasn't prepared for that. And it sat on the road, and he was so touched by it and taken by it that he stopped. And he started to just be with this heron. And while he was spending time with this heron, everybody passed him up and he lost the race. And as the author summed this up, the author said, perhaps the real purpose of his training for the race was to be there at that moment when that heron went down.
Oh, I
Maybe
love
that
that.
was the purpose after all.
I
I
love
thought
that.
to myself, oh my gosh.
That's a great reminder.
Isn't that a really fun story? So like, can we just really not know? Like what you said when you came in and we all said we don't know. Is it okay not to know? And is it okay that when something different happens, we might look back and say, is this what you want? I mean, can we be that open to the journey that we are on? I don't know. I think that's just a great story. Is it really about, was it all along just to get me to that place or meet that person and break that into little parts? I mean, you can watch something unfold where suddenly you get that heart nudge to do something and it changes your life and you don't really know that's going to happen. And then you look back and you say, wow, what if I hadn't listened? What if I hadn't listened? For the man that died, I mean, what if I hadn't listened? He wouldn't have done all those things. I just want to tell you that after he died, I got to talk to his daughter several times, and she had all his journals.
Mm.
And he gave her such a gift. She
Mhm.
said, when he read that book you told him to, and everything that happened after that was such a gift to all of us. What if I hadn't done that?
Followed that nudge. You
Mhm.
followed that nudge, that spark.
Where
Beautiful.
where is your heart nudging you next these days?
My heart says, I'm not done. I have work to do. My friend and I are committed to creating a women's retreat in our church, and it's going to be a 1.5 day retreat. And it's something about a living faith in uncertain times, very uncertain times. But yes, I'm called to do that. But I'm also called, when we moved to Chicago 2 years ago, we have family, but I don't know anybody. There's no church, there's no Sophia, I have a group of women in Fond du Lac, the princesses of play, we call ourselves. We've been a circle of friends for God knows 20 years. That isn't here yet. So I have been called to try to find the right church. I think we have found the right church. I'm called to go there and learn more about it and see what is there, to begin to create caring community around Jim and me so that we can be there with others and others will be there for us and we can be community to each other. But it takes a long time for that. People my age, our age, they have their people, they have their tribes. And so that doesn't happen real fast, or at least it hasn't in my experience. But more than ever, I am called to attend to that. We'll be having our neighbors that we don't know very well over for a drink or something this summer. We'll begin to invite people to a more connected relationship right here in our community. That's beautiful. Um, and I finally am finding some tennis partners, and it's beginning to come together after 2 years of efforts to try to find people. That's good because we'll have each other. Maybe we'll become more intimate friends over time. Who knows? You follow the nudge, and keep asking for help. Um, and over time, and it took so long for some of these connections to finally happen, um, but they're starting to happen. So it seems really, really important to create caring community here, which is the theme of Sophia, the vision, creating caring community. That seems pretty vital and pretty like now. Um, at the same time, when I go back to Florida, do the Stephen Ministry training, give the women's retreat, go on retreats myself, listen to my heart, do my journaling. I read a lot of books with my friend Dwayne, who helped write the book, Wisdom from the Woods. One of them that I read that's really helpful is called Hope Rising, and how the science of hope can change your life. That's been really helpful for me in understanding how agency and a pathway can lead me to a goal if I have a goal. So, agency for me is, how do I nurture that juice? Where is that juice? How do I nurture it? Well, that's why I'm practicing my journaling again. I had kind of left that for a while. Such a really powerful part of how I listen to what nurtures my juice, if you will. Um, and we're just finishing this book called Practical Optimism: The Art, Science, and Practice of Exceptional Well-Being. And of course, we did the book by Dr. Gladys McGarry, The Well-Lived Life, that you're reading, Erin. So
Yeah.
we keep reading these books that inspire us as to how to take what we hear in our heart nudges and begin to create a pathway toward where it's going. Um, Again, Dwayne and I are doing this in relationship, and we have since 2015. And it's
Mm.
about encouraging each other. It's about mirroring back to each other. It's about being with each other when things are really scary, and sometimes they are. Um, and through transitions, we've had many transitions in each of our lives. So I believe in having connections with people who really are there in this time in the journey and want to share it intimately,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you will, intimately. So I feel very alive. I wasn't this alive a couple years ago. I was sort of flat, and I feel very alive. I do feel a little bit of urgency. We have a lot of good family connections coming up. I mean, talk about meaningful opportunities to create memories, and to support like Max in his graduation. The whole family's coming in, all kinds of changes going on in our family that we can be there to support, all kinds of reasons to be where we are. I will tell you that we got to Chicago because I knew for a long time we needed to come, but Jim wasn't quite ready, and we kept kind of putting it off. And then all of a sudden, I was with a friend in Michigan, and I was in a circle of conversation in which we were having that intimate kind of conversation. And somebody asked me a question, what does your heart most yearn for? Something like that. And all of a sudden, these tears came, and I said, I long to be near my daughter and my grandchildren. And went home and said to Jim, it's time to move.
Mm.
And he said, okay. And here we are.
Mm.
So, when that nudge comes and you got those soul tears falling that you didn't even know you were carrying, oh my gosh, it was time to move.
It's time to move.
So that's why I'm here. That's what got me here. That's what got us here. And I have to tell you something funny. We bought a townhouse, never thinking we were going to do that. Well, if you could see our townhouse and be on the second and third floors, it's a tree house. It really, truly is.
I love it.
It's a tree house,
I love it. Your
right?
10-year-old little girl is just thrilled, isn't she?
Yes.
She
Going
is
back to
just
part one.
like, oh my gosh. Jim and I sat there last night and I said, Jim, do you realize that we're in a tree house? He said, we didn't realize that when we bought it, did we? But boy, we sure are. We are surrounded by trees. And I can open my window on the third floor and touch the branch. I mean,
Oh,
honestly.
Mm.
So yeah, isn't it funny? Full circle.
Love it.
love it so
Yes.
much.
Well, our conversations have been so soul nurturing for me. And I really feel like I don't remember what part. Was it this part or the last part? I don't remember what part we were talking about it, but where I said I've been feeling this, like, what's the point, right? I feel like our conversation has answered that for me. And I feel like what you said, 10-year-old little you was asking or hearing from the wind of how are we all going to get along in this world? I feel like we've answered that. And it's not the like hard and fast, like this is the answer. It is the listening to your heart, following those nudges, loving and being loved even when it's hard.
Turning towards and reaching for intimacy.
Yeah.
Even when it's uncomfortable. Yeah.
Well, you two, you're doing something really important. And I can't thank you enough for this opportunity to be in this conversation all the times we've talked, because I know that you have helped to respark my fire. I know it. And when I get to share with you like this, it just makes me so happy to be connected. Because in fact, we were all connected around this belief in the spark that lives in each of us and how we can help each other. What you mirrored back is so powerful to me to hear, such a gift. So I just want to congratulate you both for taking the leap, listening to your heart, your nudge, that deep inner nudge. I love it, Aaron. It said, no, now, no, no.
Not going
It's
away.
Oh my
time. Yep.
goodness. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I look forward to hearing other people who have these conversations with you. I hope that no one feels afraid, because it's really easy to be here because you're so wonderful to be with. So thank you so much.
Mm,
You're very welcome.
yes. Thank you. And I hope that this conversation inspires all of us, but everyone else listening or watching to practice.
Yeah.
Have the conversation.
Slow down.
Yeah.
Be present. Connect with your wise people in your life, right?
Yeah.
Like, I've been looking forward to this conversation this week because I'm so busy. And I was like, I know that, Ginny, I know your energy is going to make me be present and to slow down. And that is such a gift that your generation can give to us if we
Wow.
just set the time aside to do that.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you so much for that, because your heart has a lot to help you with and tell you. I mean, oh my gosh, look at what you're giving the world here. So thank you for being willing to listen to your own heart and to give yourself what you both and each need to be your best selves and to really flourish, if you will, to let your light shine.
I can't help but there's some new mug in Erin's cabinet.
Thanks to Jenny.
A belated birthday gift, yeah. Because we know, well, I have a mug obsession as well, but we're nurturing that in each other. But this mug says flourishing.
Mm-hmm.
So my goodness.
It's timely that that seems to be the theme.
Yes.
In everything we've been talking about for today.
Oh, isn't that beautiful? There you have it, as they would
Awesome.
say.
Well, thank you so much, Jenny.
Yes, much love to you.
So much love, and we will absolutely continue these conversations. I'm sure you'll be a repeat guest at some point. It's inevitable.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens to each and all of us. So
yes,
thank you so
absolutely.
much, and blessings to everyone who listens.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Red Couch. We would love if you would head on over and subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review. It helps us tremendously as we rebel against the status quo of disconnection. We need you. We appreciate you. You can also head on over to our website, redcouchrebels.com, to send us a note and explore your inner rebel with us on our online network. We'd love to see you there.